to stay seated and keep your phones off during our speaker. Now, would you please help me enthusiastically welcome our speaker who has traveled all the way from Phoenix, Terry M. Just that word.
Yeah, hi, I'm Terry. I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here with you tonight. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love it with all my heart. And the reason I love it with all my heart is I'm connected to the truth about what happened to me from the moment that man worked his 12-step on me to where I stand tonight. And with that understanding of what Alcoholics Anonymous and these steps have done to my life, I have great reverence and love for it. And I'll tell you what, this group is absolutely incredible. To come into this place, to be greeted so warmly, to see, I take this seriously, right? I was happy to drive up here. Almost no complaining in my mind about the traffic, but there was a little bit, but that's why I keep doing this. But I came in dead, and Alcoholics Anonymous breathed life into me. If you're to say what matters most to most people in life, they would tell you probably relationships, their loved ones, their family. And the first thing the disease of alcoholism attacked in my life was my relationships. And by the time I had a member work his 12-step on me, I was at a place where I was physically destroyed by the alcohol. I was mentally out there. I was spiritually void. I had a wife that I loved with all my heart. And I had 2 sons that I loved, sons that I would kill for, sons that I would die for, but sons who I could not get sober for. And I was convinced that the very best thing that could happen for them was for me to kill myself. And I'm not trying to be dramatic, it's just I already knew that there was no way to stop. Because I'd been trying to stop for a very, very long time. What I had never encountered, though, was this life-saving, life-giving program of Alcoholics Anonymous. The people I drank with drank like I drank. I was surrounded by people that drank the way I drank my whole life, so it seemed. I'm 1 of 10, I'm second to the youngest. Big Irish Catholic family, and all of my brothers and sisters go at it hard. But there was something different between them and me. See, I had this view of what an alcoholic was, and it was really the one that movies in Hollywood had thrust upon the world and portrayed. And it was, the homeless person, the Skid Row bum. Indeed, many of them are alcoholics, many aren't. But they represent less than 2%. The other 98% are pretty well represented by the group that I see as I look out here over this audience tonight. And so I am not a guy that, I was a guy who could go to work. I went to work every day. I had a home and I had a wife and I had kids, even though I was robbing my own children's piggy banks, even though I was, living a life that was really scandalous, but at the same time, I had no idea that it was drinking was playing the significant role that it was playing in my destruction. I thought it was all the things that my mind had told me over the years. And the things that my father or counselor. So in my life, in my history, my mom begged me to stop. What's wrong with you? See, the other brothers and sisters that go hard, but when it was time to stop, they did. When it was time to go home because they had to work in the morning, they did. I still worked in the morning, but I didn't stop. I would always crank up the music and yell, "One more for the ditch." And that's the way that it was with me. And so my mom tried to use the only thing she had, which was, shame and guilt. And my father tried using the strap. I'm a young alcoholic. I'm a guy that got in trouble at an early age and stayed that way until somebody worked their 12-step on me. And so my father's attempts to try to beat some sense into his son didn't work. My mother's attempts, the school counselors, the police handcuffs, the judge's sentences, the military court-martials, nothing worked. And then I met my wife, Donna. My smoking hot wife, Donna, is how I refer to her, right? I met this girl whose eyes were so blue and they sparkled like the sea. And man, I met her in college and I fell madly in love with her. And I did not know what was wrong with me. I threw her on the back of my horse. I was her knight in shining armor. Come with me, baby. We're going to have a life. We're going to dream big and I'm going to be rich and we're going to see the world and it's all going to be awesome. And that's how my mind worked. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a hard worker. I'm a hard driver. I'm a hard drinker. And so I just, she jumped on the back with me and we went riding off into the sunset to have our adventure. I could tell you the story of my alcoholism through her eyes. I remember the first time I came home, it was like 5 a.m. And she looked at me, she goes, "My God, you're okay." Her eyes were swollen with tears. I had called the police, I checked the hospitals, and I just got drunk, baby, it's no big deal, and I'm sorry, I'm just glad you're okay. And then I watched that look in her eyes change as the years went by. And I watched her go from that look of concern, I watched it turn to anger. And then I watched the anger give way to disgust. And then after the disgust, I watched it give way to indifference. She didn't care anymore. I had killed the love this woman had for me. In Dante's Inferno, they say there's a sign over the gates of hell that say, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." My old sponsor, J.T. Haynes, rest in peace. He was a tough Arizona lawman. He's the one who told me about that and told me about that book and what it says over the gates of hell. And then he would always add this. He said, "Terry, there's a basement in hell." And that's where alcoholics end up, and that's where they drag their families. And that was my story, right? So I know nothing works. So I meet Donna, I fall in love, you think love will rescue me, nothing works. But along the way, people would say to me, like, "What's wrong with you? You're a good athlete. Why do you do this? You got that beautiful family. Why do you do this?" If I had known the answer to that, I would have stopped doing it. I had gotten good talking tos by the best of them over the years, and I could not see, I couldn't hear what they said. I'd listen to them, I'd nod politely, I would agree with them that, yeah, something's got to change. So I'd get to the gym and I'd start working out, or I'd start running, or I'd start, going to church, or I'd start praying more. And I would start to change. I remember when my wife, Donna, said to me, she said, "Honey, it's time for us to stop partying." Because my wife went at it hard like I did. She said, "It's time for us to stop. Let's start a family." And I said, "That's a great idea. Let's do that." And my wife stopped. I didn't know I couldn't. She didn't know I couldn't. See, in the big book, it talks about the real alcoholic. It says they may or may not become a continuous hard drinker, but they will suffer loss of control over the amount once they start. I am a binge drinker. The only time I ever drank in the morning was on vacation. I never got the shakes. That wasn't my experience. And so what it isn't so much what it says in the beautiful book. It isn't so much how much we drink. It's what it does to us. It's the way it affected me. Is that as I drank, I took the drink took me. And along the way, I had some pretty comical experiences in my drinking, and I'm going to share a couple of them with you. So over in Sedona, up in Oak Creek Canyon, they got a fish farm up there. You know what I'm talking about? We could go fishing up there. It's a great day. So here's how I drink. I'm at the fish farm with my wife, our kids. I'm with a buddy and his wife and kids, and it's a Saturday afternoon. And we go up there, and there's this old guy, and he's cutting up this bait that he was making in cookie sheets. And he's chopping it up, and he looks at all of us, and it's a Saturday, there's a crowd around. He goes, "Oh, excuse me." He's got like 2 teeth. He says, "You see this bait here? This bait's got all the vitamins and nutrients necessary to sustain life. And when the famine comes, I got the patent on this bait. And I'm going to be a billionaire. And it tastes good too." And he stuck that bait in his mouth, chewing it up. And I'm, okay, dude, whatever, right? So we go fishing, and along with the fishing comes the drinking. I'm drinking, I'm fishing, I'm drinking some more. When it's time to go, he's the same guy who's going to clean the fish now. And there's a group of folks around there, and he gives everybody the same spiel about the vitamins and nutrients. And I see a piece of bait on the dock. I pick it up, and I go, "Excuse me, folks." I'll say, "You see this here bait? It's got all the vitamins and nutrients to sustain life. And when the famine comes, I got the patent. I'm going to sell it and be a billionaire." And I popped it, and I go, "And it tastes good too." And I popped it in my mouth, and I bit into it, and it had a cream center. And I spit it in my hand, and the old guy looked at me, and he said, "Boy, that ain't bait, that's duck shit." And that pretty much describes the way I drank, right? I drink, and eventually it all ends up as shit, right? That's the way that it goes for me. But so back into my kind of drinking, I'm going to give you a story of my alcoholism. I am a car salesman by trade, right? And that's a pretty hard job to have, believe me, because it's got a lot of stereotypes with it. I remember after I got sober and we went to the first family reunion, they said, "It's okay if you tell the distant relatives that you're in Alcoholics Anonymous, just don't tell them you sell cars." And I go, okay. So here I am at work, and I was a good car salesman, right? And I'm having a great day, and I'm selling like crazy. And my boss says to me, he says, "You did a good job last month." He said, "Here's some cash. Go down to Zach's Bar and Grill." I worked at the corner of Scottsdale Road and McDowell at the Ford dealership. He goes, "Go on down and get some burgers for us on shift. It's my treat." And so I grabbed my buddy who drinks the way I drink. Everybody seemed to drink the way that I drink, that I ran with. And then the boss goes, "Hey, one last thing." And he had a set of keys, and he throws them to me. And he goes, "That's the owner's wife's new car. Put a couple of miles on it for me, buddy. Let me know how it runs." I said, "Yes, sir. Not a cloud on the horizon," like it says in the big book. I drive down to Zach's Bar and Grill 2 miles away. I walk in. On the mirror, it says Rumpleman's 100 proof and St. Pauli Girl 2 for 1. A sale. How can I pass? I said, I'll have one of those. And they poured this giant shot of 100 proof. And I thought, that'd be good for my breath, right? The peppermint. So I did that. I don't know how many times. Was it 2 times, 3 times? I had ordered the burgers. Finally, it's ready to go. I got to go back. I stacked the burgers between me and my buddy. And I remember what my boss said. "I wonder what this baby will do." And I floored it. And anybody remember old 4-barrel carburetors and cars going, woo, woo, and it starts going, right? And my buddy's going, red leader 1 to red leader 2, airspeed 40, airspeed 50, airspeed 60, airspeed 70, airspeed 80, red light. And I see that red light, and I'm slamming on the brakes, and the car's hopping like this. And my buddy screams, "Prepare to ram!" Boom, boom, boom. I stuffed this brand new car into the back of 2 brand new cars right in front of the dealership that I worked at. A citizen, a good citizen, saw what happened, and he came running over, and he reached his hand in to try to get the car keys. He must have thought I was intoxicated. And when he did that, he scratched the side of my face. I didn't like that. He was wearing a tie. I grabbed him by his tie. I started kicking his ass out that car window, and I said, I have to deliver this food. So in a high-speed run, 3 flat tires, totaled vehicle, I drive over the curbs, I circle the block, I pull up behind the used car building, I take the tomatoes off the windshield, I put the food and the burgers all together, and I walk into my boss's office. And I'm split across the bridge of my nose and blood's pouring out. The knees are ripped out of my dress pants. You can hear the ambulances and the fire trucks and all that stuff coming already. I set the burgers down and I handed him the keys and I gave him his change because I'm an honest man. And I gave him all that stuff and I went and I sat in my office and started eating my burger. Next thing you know, I'm in the back of a police car. And the owner and his wife come walking out of the building. They come walking up to the police car. And she looks over and sees her car. And she goes, her jaw drops. And then they look in at me and I'm cuffed up in the back. And I look at them and I start projectile vomiting. Ah! You know how glamorous alcoholism is, right? I mean, they spend $3 million for a 30-second spot during the Super Bowl. If they could just force them to take a percentage of that to show the other side of the drinking. Because weekends aren't made for Michelob. You know what? When you're an alcoholic and you drink, I have no idea. It's poison to my spirit, poison to my soul. So the reason I tell you that story is because that's how I drank. I could hold it together. I could do well. I would often, as my wife reminded me, I would often go with the guy after work to have a couple of drinks to help them work on their marital problems. You know, I'm having troubles with my wife at home. And I would sit in the bar drinking, telling them how to have a good marriage while mine is going to hell at home. I was insane. I did not know I was insane. I just knew that no matter what I did, I built it up and I tore it down. And I built up the hopes of the people around me, and then I shattered their hopes and dreams for me. And it was as though I'd been spending my whole life digging my grave, right? And there were things I loved to do. I was a good athlete. I used to love to run, and I threw my love of running because running and drinking don't go together. In my education, I was a smart kid, but my education couldn't come. You know, I ended up getting through high school with a 196 GPA, right? I mean, I tested into a college prep school that you had to be smart to get into. It goes in the grave. I got the opportunity to serve my country. And I drank that away, and my military career went in that grave. And my mother's hopes for her son and my father's dreams, they all went in that grave. And just when I was ready to climb in that grave, and the last bit of dirt covering my face, a miracle happened. I had been praying for a while. I was praying, God, take me, God, save me, do something. I was in a pawn shop in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm standing in this pawn shop, and the man behind the counter, I got some Bose speakers, and I'm pawning my speakers, selling them to him actually. And he looks at me and he says, dude, I don't know if you're in trouble or not. But the minute he started to talk, my mind started to slam shut. It was like, oh, great. One more person with authority over me. One more person. He's got the money I need. One more person who's going to ask me what's wrong with you. My dad would say that to me all the time. He'd say, you're like a sheep. You're easily led. What is wrong with you? Oh, I hated me. I hated what people had said to me. It was as though alcoholism cut out my tongue. I couldn't even protest when you were wrong, because I knew if I did, somebody would call me out for my drinking. And I was shrinking. Instead of being a knight in shining armor, my wife watched her husband turn into a shell, a coward, a rust bucket, a totally broken man. There was no more laughter in our home. There were no talks of adventures and travel. Hell, in the end, there weren't any more tears. We had cried those tears out. What there was is there was despair. There was the 4 horsemen that our book talks about: terror, frustration, bewilderment, and despair. That's what was in my home. And I'm standing in this pawn shop, and there was a song, and the song went like this: send me an angel right now. And I've been saying that, God, send me an angel. And in the last few months of my drinking, I'd be laying in bed at night, and my hand would go up. And you know those nights where you don't really ever sleep? It's just, the booze is coming out of the pores, and it's like, there's like no midnights. It's just an endless siege. And my right hand would go up like this. And my wife, Donna, would push that hand down because she didn't want me to have it flop over and hit her. And my hand would go up again and push it down and go up again, push it down. It was this involuntary response that I was having in those last few months. And I never gave that much thought. I know what it is now. It was God. In the book, it talks about the flimsy reed becomes the loving hand of God. It was God telling me I was dying. I was 140 pounds. I was hopeless. I was convinced that suicide was the best option, not just for me, but for my wife and my kids. That's how dark it was. And so that was God. God was reaching down there and just saying, hold on, son. Hold on. I got a miracle coming your way. And that miracle came in a pawn shop, and I'm standing there, and the man in the pawn shop looks at me and he says, dude, I don't know if you're in trouble or not. And my mind started to go, oh, God, just started to close. But before my mind could close, he flipped it. What it says in this beautiful book is an alcoholic armed with the truth about himself can go to where no one else can. Punishment couldn't get there. Rewards couldn't get there. Shame couldn't get there. Love could not get there. I loved my sons as much as any man ever loved his sons. I couldn't stop. This man turned it on me, and he said, I don't know if you're in trouble or not, but I used to be in trouble. He said, I could not stop drinking. It was just ruining my life. And I went to Lark, and he told me where it was, on the south side of the airport, on Watkins Street, right on the south runway at Sky Harbor off of 24th Street. He's drawing a map to the detox. I don't know what he's doing. And while he's doing that, I'm sitting there thinking, oh man, this guy is off the rocker. And he says, I have been sober now for 4 years, and I own this pawn shop and everything in it. And then he smiled and he went, a lot of it used to be yours. And I thought, man, is that cold-blooded, right? So here's the God I've come to know and love as a result of working these steps. And when I say God, I had no belief. Well, I had kind of a belief, but I knew God didn't believe in me. No one believed in me. But here's what I know, is that God is so merciful, because God didn't come to me as the preacher, the teacher. He didn't come as the Bible, and he didn't come as the big book. Even though he comes in all of those ways to me now. But God came to me in the person of the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's how God came to me in May of 1991, and that is how God is coming to me right here, right now, tonight. And so as this man, I now know I was in the middle of the most important moment of my life. It wasn't when I met Don, and it wasn't when I was born, because my life would have had no value. It would have been one of those tragic endings where the best anybody could have said was, what a waste. But because of this program, because of what it does, it allows the knight in shining armor who's turned to rust to start polishing the armor again. And that's what I did driving up here tonight. That's what I do when I get on my knees every night and do my nightly review. I'm polishing the armor. And so while this man is working the 12-step on me, I was judging him. I was thinking, oh, this poor guy, I'll let him preach a while longer. Maybe I'll get an extra $20. That's how good this God is. That here I am, God has crafted a miracle. He's been holding on to my hand. He sets up the circumstances. And I would like to ask you a question that you should ask yourself when you do your review tonight. How elaborate was the higher power's plan to work its 12-step on you? Mine was pretty elaborate. When I think about the circumstances and the events that surrounded the hand of God in that, it's mind-blowing. But here I am in the middle of the miracle and I'm judging. That's what I did. I judged. I'm thinking, but that's how much God loves me. It didn't matter. He didn't withdraw the support. So I got busy. I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I was 12-stepped into AA. I did not look it up in a directory. AA found me. I did not find it. And I have devoted my life since then to go and do likewise. I drive up here. I go to the jails. They told me, go into jails, go make a difference. And I started going into jails. I remember my first jail meeting. I got in there and I said, I had 6 months of sobriety. I'm in maximum security. And there's Crips and Bloods and Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood. I mean, it's a lot of tough, nasty looking dudes. And they go, okay, well, our new guy Terry's going to do the lead today. And I stood up and I said, gentlemen, jail's really not my story. I've been arrested a couple times. I don't really think there's anything that I can say to you. And one of them got up, the biggest one of all of them, and he got up, and his name was the Aryan Barbarian. And he looked at me and he said, sir, we don't need help with how to do prison. We got that down. But you said you've got 6 months of sobriety. There's a lot you can teach us. So how did you get your 6 months? And because of this God that I started doing that jail meeting with 6 months of sobriety, which was the requirement at the time, I've done it every week for the past 31 years, with the exception of when they boxed us out during COVID. During those years, I got a phone call one day by a young man. And he said, I'm 18 years old and I'm in a lot of trouble and I can't stop drinking. And my dad says you would help me. He said, and then he told me what his name was. I'm not going to divulge it because of the anonymity. And I said, I don't recall your father. And he said, well, you probably know him as the Aryan Barbarian. And from a prison cell, he said, call Terry. He'll help you, son. And I got to. Because that's how this works. That's how it worked with a failed stockbroker and a proctologist, a butt doctor. God put them together to start the largest movement in human consciousness since the birth of Jesus. Started off with 2 and there's millions worldwide. So I got busy. I started following the footsteps of others. And I'm so grateful for those of you, especially celebrating birthdays. Thank you. Thank you also for having more time, because later this month, I'll be celebrating on May 23rd. I will celebrate my 32nd birthday. And I will tell you what, that it was because of the people that came before me that knew it was their responsibility, not just to get sober, but to prepare a place for me. And it's my job to prepare a place for those who have yet to come in. And as we do this thing, the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous unfolds, and all you have to do is work the program. You don't have to believe in it. I saw the 12 steps and I thought, oh no, how is that going to work? I loved my wife. I loved my mom. I loved my sons. I would have done anything to change for them. How are these steps administered by these strangers going to do what their love couldn't? And the oldsters said to me, they said, it doesn't matter what you believe, son, it matters what you do. This is a program of action. Get into the action. You don't have to believe in God, just do the work. Just follow in the footsteps. And so that's what I've been doing these years, right? And so what does that look like from my viewpoint now? I've been doing it for a while. Getting sober's hard. I remember like having maybe 6 months, 9 months of sobriety. And man, those days are hard days. Congratulations, brother, on the 30, right? I mean, those are hard days. And there was no money and there was no, we were just literally, we were broke all the time. There was no money to keep the car from being repoed, it seemed, and then we get a check in the mail. Overpayment on an insurance premium. There was no money to buy groceries, and I'd open it up and there was a refund from overpayment on taxes from 6 years before. It was amazing how checks would start showing up in the mailbox, just enough to allow us to make it, just enough so we could get by. And so I had 6 or 9 months, and I get home and there's some snacks. First time there was Coca-Cola and there was beef jerky. And I went, oh my God, man, I'm bringing the whole check home, but it isn't much. And I'm a salesman and nobody's buying, and things were super hard, right? Getting sober and staying sober is a hard thing. And it's important for me to always remember how hard it is in those first couple of years so that I can have compassion for the new person. And so I see the beef jerky, I sit down, I pop that Coke, I'm talking to my wife, I open up a jerky, I eat that first one, oh man, I eat the second one, I'm on number 3 or number 4, we're having this nice talk. And then I look at Donna, I go, Donna, I'm not complaining, but this jerky isn't very good. I wouldn't buy this brand again. And she looked at me, she said, honey, those are dog treats. She said, that's not jerky. I said, well, why did you let me keep eating it? And she goes, it looked like you were enjoying yourself so much. I didn't want to deprive you of that. So one of the things that me and Donna did is we jumped in with the oldsters, right? So we found couples that were happy being married and we hung out with them. And the old members, the folks that had the years of life experience, I heard it put this way. That when an old person dies, it's the same as a library burning to the ground. Because the old folks are the keepers of our traditions, and we're an oral society, and they're the tellers of the story. And so, it is so important to me, right? So me and Donna would always pick up we always had a couple that were sober a long time. I didn't know that 50 years I was blessed. I came in around a lot of guys with 50 and 55 and 60 years, and me and Donna would always take them somewhere. We'd pick them up, we'd drive them to the roundups, we'd drive them to the conventions, we'd drive them to the anniversary celebrations. So one night we're driving this one couple, Pat and Betty Patterson. Now, I can use their name, they're long gone. These people were incredible. They were stalwarts. They were some of the early members of Alcoholics Anonymous in the Valley. And so we're driving along, and Betty was perfect, just beautiful, just always her hair perfect, made everything perfect. And she says to Donna, sitting in the back seat, and me and Pat are up front, she says, Donna, she goes, I got so sick of Pat that I decided I was going to kill him. That was the only way out. She said, so what I did is he came home drunk, and I took his belt off him, and I put the belt around his neck, and I tightened it up real good, and I tightened it up more, and his eyes started bulging, and he started turning blue, and right when I thought I had him out, he sat up, and he looked at me, and I stepped back, and I looked at him, and I said, Pat Patterson, just how did you get that belt around your neck? And so she starts laughing, and Donna's laughing, and I promise you, the people that laughed hardest at that story are the Al-Anons. So my ribs used to always hurt, right? And I always wondered, why do my ribs hurt? Because I'm a sloucher, I'm a leaner, I'm on the bar. And Donna says, well, Terry come home drunk, Betty, and I'd be pissed, I'd be steaming, And he'd come home and right to bed, and I couldn't sleep. I was so angry, and he'd start snoring. So I'd ball my fist up, and boom, I'd give him a shot in the ribs, and he'd stop snoring. And then he'd roll over, and when he started, I'd get the other side. And that's how I found out about the story of my sore ribs. So you know what? I understand the hell I put my wife through. I cheated on her. I've been totally faithful in sobriety. That doesn't deserve a medal. Men, I was taught by the men of Alcoholics Anonymous that real men don't cheat. And I became a real man here. And I became a real father here. And I started emptying that grave I'd been filling. And I started treating my wife with love and respect. And so I started doing different acts, outward signs of my inward belief. I like to watch sports. I stopped when the playoffs would be on. I would turn the TV off and I'd go to AA meeting. And my wife would say, "You love basketball," or "You love the playoffs." And I did that for probably the first 10 years of my sobriety. And it was my outward sign. I'd go to the meetings and I would say, "Hey, I'm Terry, I'm an alcoholic. I'm here tonight because my team's playing in the World Series." And if it wasn't for Alcoholics Anonymous, there'd be no home and no television to watch it in. And there'd be no family. So I did things like that, and I continue to do those things, right? I give stuff up. I give up social media on a regular basis so that I can read more. Starting May 21st, I'm going to do the 21-day Big Book Challenge. There's thousands of people around the world that do it. May 21st, you read 9 pages a day for 21 days. And you finish with Dr. Bob's Nightmare on Founders Day. I've been doing that every year with my wife. We read it to each other. So alcoholism destroyed my marriage. It destroyed our hopes. It destroyed our dreams. Alcoholism is where dreams go to die. But AA is where dreams come back to life. This is the place like the mythological phoenix bird that rose from the burnout ashes to new life. So I started being the kind of husband and I started being the kind of man. And what I've learned is this. I asked my aunt when she turned 100, I asked her a question. I said, "What is the most significant thing you've seen over the course of your life?" And she'd seen it all, right? The world wars, the space flight, the internet, computers, everything throughout the course of her life. I said, "What's the most significant thing you saw?" And she said, she said it was the TV. That was the most significant thing that happened to the world. And then she said this. She said the TV came on and everyone went inside and they never came back out. Today, look around the neighborhoods. People know who's on Dancing with the Stars, but they don't know who lives next door. Alcoholics Anonymous is the front porch of the new millennial. This is it. This is where we gather. This is where we talk. This is where we visit the sick. This is where we go to the imprisoned. This is where we get to be broken people that are forgiven as a result of steps and making amends. And I started doing the right things in my life. And I started working super hard. But just because you work hard in AA doesn't mean you're not going to get your lumps. Sometimes life comes at us hard. And I don't have the luxury of tipping one back or knocking the edge off it, because I know what happens. I know what happened to me. I sponsor men, and as a result of that, I stay engaged. And by sponsoring them, they keep me connected to the truth of my own first step, and that I am an alcoholic. And that if I take one, it will take me. So by staying connected to this truth, right? But sometimes things happen that are so hard, right? And I was able to, like in the past couple of years, in the past couple months, I had 3 men that I've sponsored for 27 years die of natural causes. That's sad, right? I'm bummed. The man who first opened the big book for me died recently. During COVID, when everything was shut down and there was no service, me and some of my AA buddies got together because my home group is the Wolf Pack down in the valley, and we have a Wolf Pack up in the Navajo country. Reached out to the Indians and said, how are things up there? And they go, it's really bad up here, man. He said, alcoholism's killing them slow, COVID's killing them fast. So me and my AA buddies in the valley, we put on a food drive. And we thought maybe we'll get a pickup truck or two of goods and take them up north. We ended up needing the National Guard to drive for us, and we delivered more than 3 million pounds of food and PPE and diapers and stuff to the tribes. And we were able to do that all anonymously. And we were able to do that work, and the Indian who I launched it with died of COVID. He got the Delta variant. And I thought, this is wrong. And then my son, who lives across the street because he loves being close to his dad and his mom, she's pregnant and they get a test and they come back and they go, there's something wrong. The baby's got a broken leg in utero and she has brittle bone disease and she's going to be a little person and she'll live between 2 days and 10 years. Monday, I eulogized the man who opened the book. Tuesday, Sean Lee died. And Thursday, we got the diagnosis on Nora. Friday, I'm on my knees and I hear, get off your knees, prayer doesn't work. And I looked around, who said that? But I kept praying because I know the truth, prayer does work. I'm a product of someone else's prayers. That's why when I walk into a room, I like to tap the back of an empty seat as a prayer for those who have yet to find one. And what ended up happening with that little granddaughter is I went to all my friends in AA and I asked them to pray, and they prayed. 24 hours later, the doctor called up and they said, we made a mistake. She's going to be a little person, but she doesn't have that disease. She's going to have a full life. Her leg isn't broken. It was my mistake or the angle of the camera. And the doctor kept saying, I don't know what happened. And I kept thinking, I do. I know what happened. Because I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, the home of the miracle. When Bill and Bob first met, a philosopher dubbed that year Annus Mirabilis, the year of the miracle, and so is this one. So today I was with that little girl. She's 1 now, and her name is Nora. And Nora is beautiful. And I had to go through the pain of what's it going to be like for this little girl. I was afraid. I was thinking the world's cruel. Being a little person, what is it going to be like for her? And then I thought, hold on, the world isn't cruel. Not my world. Because my world is the world of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is the kindest, most loving place on earth. This is the place where when the broken man or woman walks in and the whole world turns their back on them, we open our arms. I'm grateful to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm a member in good standing. What I mean by that is that I participate. I pray, I meditate, I work the steps, I work with others, and I keep saying yes to God through these steps. And amazing things happen. And my wife, Donna, the one I cheated on, we lost a baby, and I left her after we lost the child when I was drinking. I'm a coward when I'm drinking. But my wife and I have been married now for 44 years. And my wife tells me all the time her favorite place is as close as she can get to me. My son lives across the street. My wife loves me, and I love me too. And what does that have to do with Alcoholics Anonymous? Everything. Because that's what the Alcoholics Anonymous experience is. I thank y'all for your time. God bless you.